Now, you see, when your identity is defined by society, you cannot resist it. You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the wisdom, you don't have the resources to understand that something's being put over on you. You cannot but help believe the definition of you as a free agent. But you believe yourself to be a free agent as a result of not being free. That is to say, of being hopelessly unable to resist society's identification of you.
There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table to figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Welcome to Hive Mind. This is Edge with my co-host Speaker. How's it going, Speaker?
Good. What's happening?
The usual. Just trying to hang in there in this crazy game.
It's madness.
So it is madness. It's been really interesting to watch the stock market over the last week or so, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's a game changer, actually. That was actually really good to see.
Ooh, I like how you threw the game reference in there.
Oh, I'm on the ball. I actually just woke up. I'm not really. I'm just winging this like I normally do.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the game and how it's rigged. Wall Street's a good example of that, but there's many different examples I think we're going to touch on today. But I think since that's the main focus over the past week or so is what's going on with the stock market. Maybe we should start off with that, how the game's rigged.
Well, I think it's important to kind of paint the picture first of how the game is rigged in many ways and how long it's been rigged for. This is not something that's happened overnight. It's not something that just kind of popped up suddenly. This is something that you can call them whatever you want. The elites, the NWO, the Dark Luciferians, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter. That's not the point of this. But the point is the manipulation of our world and the institutes within it.
Yeah, it is overwhelming when you take a step back and look at every institution and the depth of corruption and how it is all rigged. And it's really interesting over the past, I'd say at least a year, where it seems like the veil's been lifted, the curtains have kind of been pulled back, and all of the puppeteers are being exposed. We always knew that it was rigged, but it was just really harder to see. And now it just seems just like there's a lot more clarity about it. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's completely on the surface. They don't care. And there's reasons why they don't care anymore, and that's because they know their game has been exposed on a massive scale. Not to everyone, because there is still people very much asleep, very much feeding into this matrix or this illusion still. Some will probably never get out, where they listen to these people, they look at these people as gods or as people strive to be, and it's weird looking at the sort of praise and religion they've created around high-powered people, politicians, entertainers, and anyone in that field really that are blatant hypocrites. They're blatant liars. They've had years and history of connection to corruption, and we're talking through bloodlines here. I mean, if you go back to the days of the Morgan family and the Rockefellers, I mean, this is really the start of this corrupt elite web that has just now has its tentacles on every walk in life. And they've found a way to make it easier for them, but also harder on them. It's probably the best way I can describe it, which is through the internet and through the world being more connected. Of course, they can push their propaganda further. They can push their corruption even more. They can indoctrinate more people. But at the same time, there's other people now that have that freedom of will that can see through the bullshit and that can connect with other people that also see through the bullshit. And hence why we come into censoring and shadow banning. And yeah, their game starts becoming more and more transparent. And I think they know this.
Yeah, it does seem like the internet was a double-edged sword. As you mentioned, it enabled them to reach their tentacles out to all over the world much faster. But at the same time, it enabled us to be able to think and learn about things that they've been trying to hide from us for all this time. Just think about, and exponentially more quickly, just think about how long it took us to learn things and to pass information along before the internet. And now it's instantaneous. And with that, more people have the opportunity to get this information. Like, you think about all the secret societies, for example. That information just wasn't well known prior to the internet. But now it seems like really, if you want to know something, it's out there. It's really a choice at this point. You have a choice to know. And so, really claiming ignorance at this point seems like it just really isn't a good enough excuse, because you have the ability to learn about what these people have been up to for a very, very long time. And the choice to know is yours. And if you don't choose it, then it's a willful ignorance rather than claiming that you just didn't have the information, you know?
And like you were saying before, the way it's becoming so transparent lately, and the stock market is a really good one to lead with here, because what we saw last week was a revolution of what you can say the lower class against the elites in an arena that has normally been dominated by them, been manipulated by them for a very long time. I mean, you go back 10, 15 years, it was a lot harder to be a broker. It was a lot harder to trade once it is now. Once again, the double-edged sword of the internet. You have local, trading apps coming up from different perspectives and from different countries that, are not really completely controlled by all these elites. Of course, some are, Robinhood being the best example, that the other day during trading, when Redditors, the Wall Street Bet, decided to make this move on GameStop, which the hedge funds had shorted the prices. Now, it was complete greed by these hedge funds, and there was nothing illegal being done. I mean, you see, let's say Jimmy Kimmel, for example, and this is the way that they push their propaganda on the late show, saying, the Russians could have been involved.
Right, I saw that. It's always the Russians, right?
It's madness, right? What this group did, which it was, you can call them an unsolicited hedge fund, really. So what they did is they found out through public trading information that this hedge fund was going to shorten the stock, and they shortened it 140% under. Now, that's just full greed. I mean, you don't do that unless you know you're going to get away with it. You don't do that unless you're manipulating the market. So what these people did, they said, well, stuff it. And they started buying, and they really put the elites in a position where they had to get on par with this again, so it cost them billions. I mean, I think it was somewhere in, it's hard to know exact figures, but you're looking at 20 to like 70 billion.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that some of these hedge funds lost.
And it's like a snowball effect, it seems, because these hedge funds were borrowing the money. It wasn't even like they had this kind of capital. They were basically making bets with money they didn't have, right?
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of hedge funds do. So
right. So they have to then now borrow to cover their losses, and it's like this kind of domino effect throughout the stock market, right? With these bigger banks having to bail out the smaller ones and so on. And I wonder, if they're going to have to get a Fed bailout. And that's, I think, kind of the point, right? Is I think that these Redditors, these Wall Street Bets guys, it's not necessarily about the money. It's more about really sticking it to Wall Street. And I think that most people would say that it has to do with this whole idea of being on a fiat system, being, everything being run by the Federal Reserve, and just getting away from that model of monetary system. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's anything inherently bad with trading on stocks, but it is definitely a place that has been highly corrupted, highly manipulated for billionaires to make more billions and for the lower class traders to not get nothing. But now, because of this group, they've come together and they've said, look, we can do what you're doing as well.
Right.
You're not the only ones that can do it. And as soon as they did it, the bloodhounds came out in the media like they normally do. The media at this point is such a joke. It is such a joke. It's on par with North Korean propaganda is probably the best way I can put it.
It's not even just the
terrible.
media too. I mean, like I think in the case with Robinhood, and some of these other retail brokers, they were getting pressure from, say, Citadel and some of these lesser known huge banks that were pressuring them, these retail brokers, to limit GameStop stock purchases, and purchases of other of these sort of meme stocks, right?
On the day when it started to get out of hand. And look, Wall Street Bets had these people in a position where they were completely bent over. Let's put it that way. There was nothing they could do. They absolutely screwed them with this move. So what some of these big organizations, institutions did was definitely call on these apps to stop trading. Now, if that's not illegal, I don't know what is. Right? It's just, and it was so blatantly done in the middle of trading. It was just,
right.
And they completely exposed
the manipulation,
the underbelly of Wall Street. They completely exposed how rigged this game is.
Right. It was totally rigged for, in favor of these billionaire hedge funds, and against the regular, you and me retail brokers. For the past week, it's been rigged. However, it looks like, and this is as of Tuesday morning, I've heard that Robinhood has lifted some of those restrictions, but the damage is kind of already done, and it was just as though they were trying to slow this surge, but it's clearly market manipulation. And what's funny about it is that, well, it's not really funny, it's upsetting, but is it the Biden administration, and who is this Yellen lady over at the Treasury, I guess, who has ties to Citadel, right?
Of course they do.
Yeah. So, but they're going to investigate, and you know what they're going to find out, right? There's nothing wrong with what these huge hedge funds have done. Nothing wrong with what these huge banks have done to manipulate the market. I'm sure the investigation will be completely one-sided as far as these, Redditors, subredditors, Wall Street Bets, individual retail investors have done, and trying to find some criminality there rather than really where it should be found, which was on the manipulation side with these big banks trying to slow the purchases of gaming stocks, right?
Yeah, so like this headline that you see on your screen, why GameStop frenzy may hurt retirees along with hedge funds. It's all driven to paint these people as criminals in some way, even though what they did was, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It was perfectly legal in every step of the way. The only people acting illegally here was the hedge funds, was the institutions backing them. And it's completely ripped them apart. Now, this won't stop. They know they can do this now. So now these hedge funds and stuff are going to be very much on their toes. And good. Yeah. They should.
They should be. They shouldn't be hedging that much on risky bets with money that they don't have,
But see, this market's been manipulated. It gets manipulated every day. It gets manipulated every day. It's just unspoken to the public, really. They manipulate the market every day. It's
Right.
that
It's like
is not different for them.
it's like casinos, right? I mean, the house is always going to win, except for in certain games like poker where it takes skill. But on pretty much every other game, it's rigged for the house to usually win, right?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, so same thing.
I mean, some of the slurs that have come out. I mean, that these people, Nazis, right wing, half these people at Wall Street Bets are more independent libertarians. I mean, they're Reddit users. Reddit is a leftist platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a pretty broad scope of people that are involved in in these investments, these retail investments, and from left to right. I think that it's more of just a anti-establishment populist thing. Whether you're on the left or the right, you still know that the system's rigged and Wall Street is against all of us, right?
Yeah, and like you say here, it's not a victimless game. It's not just Wall Street billionaires who are going to ultimately pay the price. Okay, right? Because the average day person can't win. They can't allow it to win. That's not how the system is set up. It is rigged against us. And a perfect example of this is look at the financial crisis in the Obama years. Big banks went bankrupt. They got completely bailed out by the federal government, right? But if my business was to go completely bankrupt, I'm in shit. No one's coming
Right.
to bail me out.
Mm-mm, no. And you won't even get your $2,000 stimulus check.
I don't get nothing anyway.
No. No, exactly. So these guys have always gotten the long end of the stick. We always get the short end of the stick. That's the way the game is set up. And if you can find a loophole like these Wall Street Bets guys have, they're gonna try to shut it down as best they can because no, they can't have that.
Yeah. So that was that is one institution that is definitely rigged. And there's
Yeah.
many more, and I wish we could get into all of them, but that just it takes days.
Yeah, well, we can talk about some of the big ones. Like, obviously, the past year, it's exposed how the medical field is rigged, how this whole pandemic was part of that. I mean, the game's rigged when we have credible US intelligence that says that the virus likely came from that Wuhan lab, and this lab was used by the Chinese government for research for biological weapons. But instead of treating it as an act of war by China, our government's helping to cover it up. And the Biden administration's more interested in banning the term China virus because it's xenophobic. So, but you also know the game's rigged when they put people in charge like Fauci. And he helped to fund the gain of function research that resulted in the China virus because, and that was created, in the first place. And another example is when you look at how we already have treatments that are safe and effective that have been on the market for decades. And that was suppressed, demonized, banned. Even if you mentioned it on social media, doctors were fired for prescribing it. And now that we have the vaccines here, now that the election's over, oh, now it's okay for the American Journal of Medicine to admit that they were wrong about HCQ, right? So go over to that next tab, one over. Yeah. Now HCQ is okay because the election's over. American Journal of Medicine's admitting that they were wrong about HCQ, right? But how long did we have to go through this? How many people had to actually get sick and not get the early treatment that they could have received with these therapeutics because of it, right?
And this is what makes these people so evil. I mean, because of their hatred for one man and because they had to paint him as incompetent, they had to paint him as a criminal, they're willing to let you die. They don't care about you.
Yeah. And when you look at this number, 440,000, that's insane. You know the game is rigged when they've been caught playing with the numbers to make them seem higher. I mean, just this week, there was a report that came out that shows that the common flu is almost completely wiped out, and it's at the lowest levels it's been in 130 years, right? Plummeting by 95%. We know this is BS. They've just been baking in all the flu cases, right? So we know the CDC has been manipulating the data and lumping in pneumonia and influenza together to make the numbers higher. And even the WHO came out finally and admitted that their PCR testing was way off, causing too many false positives. Now, of course, all of this happened post-election, right? Because that was the whole point, okay? That's how you know it's all rigged. And in essence, you know the game's rigged when basically you had a biological agent that was unleashed on the world by China, causing the entire globe to come to a screeching halt unless we all take a vaccine, which is another untested experimental biological agent, for an illness that has a 99.98% recovery for most of the population. And there's already a safe and effective cheap therapeutic that would work for most people that are sick. It's insanity. This is how you know it's rigged. So it was never about a virus. It was always about leading the entire global population down a path of no return. They create the problem so they can force us to accept their solution. That is how you know it's rigged. Yeah. So
it's madness what we're saying at the moment. But like we said before, it has become much more transparent for those awake enough to see it. There is a lot of people still asleep to these agendas, and for us, it's, you know, it boggles us because we wonder how can't you see it? How are you missing this? And the truth is, they've done a lot of work to make these people stay in a slumber. A lot of
right.
work. There's so much that helps keep people indoctrinated, keep people asleep, and that's also become easier and easier to achieve these days because of the internet, because of things that generally make us lazy, and things that have been put in place to keep us in this cycle. People have a limited amount of things that they can think about daily. So you think about just the average family. They have to work. They have to pay their bills. They have to pay their house. They have to look after the kid. I mean, they want to go on that one holiday every year. You know, those are the things they're focused on. And in the meantime, when they don't have that, they've got a few things that I believe completely contribute to dumbing a person down. And those three things are TV, Netflix, shows, things that keep people in a deep sleep. Just keep consuming this content, which is also filled with propaganda. That's mixed in there as well. Food delivery services, which is a new one. So people don't need to leave their houses. They can just get the food, whatever they want, come straight to them. These are all things that just initially make us lazier. And third one is porn. If you can have those three things to keep the human psyche kind of in a loop, I think those three things play a very big part in people being asleep these days.
Yeah, I think the education system too, with the indoctrination, but mainly like you were saying, the media, social media, the gaslighting, and the how they're all in lockstep, you know, with the same talking points daily, the same propaganda and lies daily, just being fed to the people, fed to the masses, constantly on a 24/7 cycle. It's that old saying, I think it was Goebbels that said it, was that if you tell a lie, or maybe it was Hitler himself, but if you tell a lie enough, then it becomes the truth to these people. And so I think it's just a repetition thing, and being inundated and saturated by it, that people stay asleep. But we should talk about how the media and social media, how all of that, and Hollywood, I guess we could lump in there too, how all of that is rigged to feed us the same narrative and keep us going down the same path.
Social media is one that's heavily used now. It's, if you've ever read Orwell's 1984, The Ministry of Truth, this is what we're seeing now. We're seeing the Ministry of Truth be built up through social media platforms like this one we're on now, like Twitter, like their selected few that they've put on top of the hierarchy. They own the search engines, they own the social media platform, they own the video platforms. These people are in control of the system when it comes to what we view, what we see, what they allow on their platforms, what they don't allow on their platforms. And it is a scary thing. It is something that we should have never let get this big.
Yeah, it's gotten really, really obvious, their need for control, because with social media, naturally, those platforms allow debate and allow a competition of ideas. And when you're trying to control a narrative, then you have to shut down those competing ideas that oppose your narrative. And so you see that more and more and more, the censorship and of social media, with people getting kicked off, and now even being labeled as, say, domestic terrorists if they oppose political opinions, the popular political opinion, or the political opinion that's in power. And it's really becoming so blatantly obvious the growing need to censor and silence, isn't it?
You have to control the psyche of the population. You cannot have dissenters to the agenda, dissenters to the estate, to the state. Unfortunately, there's still millions of us, and that's why. Before I get into Hollywood and entertainment, that's why I still have some faith in us getting around this, because what Orwell depicted in 1984 with the way the world can go, a very authoritarian way, he stated that a civilization must first turn into a collectivist civilization before it can turn into full authoritarianism. Now, I'm in agreement with that, and that is what you're seeing them try to do with cutting us off platforms. They're trying to create a civilization that has no other viewpoints bar the ones they are creating. Unfortunately, the population of this world is something that they are trying to get rid of, but it's something that they can't control. And unfortunately, there is millions of us that see through this bullshit, even though they like to make it you think that there isn't, and they like to make you think that you're an outcast or ostracized from the main point of view. You'll be surprised how many people are awake to this, but they feel helpless because they do see how much is against them, and I completely understand this point. But going into Hollywood and how they've rigged the entertainment industry, you see a lot of these people, actors, performers, that either have long family connections, like you see with political family connections as well, that become famous or that succeed, and the ones that kind of come out of nowhere. You look at the Disney stars, for example, and MK Ultra that is put on them, especially we're going into Disney now here. And as they get older, they start influencing the young, another move to push their propaganda. But a lot of these people are selected exactly like politicians are selected.
Right.
And they do
Like, you
their
don't-
best to and to keep their bloodline pure as well. Let's take this for example. But sorry to cut you off. Continue.
Well, I was going to say is that you don't make it in Hollywood unless you're owned and you're compromised in some way, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're one of those outsiders who somehow makes it on your own, they'll take you down or they'll try to compromise you because it does have to be controlled in order to push because the people follow the stars and you have to be in line with a certain ideology to push the population in a progressive direction.
And definitely, if you want to keep getting jobs,
exactly, that's how they do it.
But there is a few that kind of escape, and they're rare. But I'm going to use Russell Brand for an example. If you remember back in I'd say 2007, 2008, Russell Brand was a real up-and-coming entertainer. He got a couple of hit movies. Forgetting Sarah Marshall was one of them. Getting to a Greek was another one. So he was a very funny actor, and I think a dude that a lot of people enjoyed. Married Katy Perry, a famous singer, completely controlled. And then he kind of went quiet. He broke up with her for reasons that he explained, as in he got sick and tired of her vacuous, vapid celebrity lifestyle. And he completely cut ties with Hollywood. He completely disappeared. Now, of course, they did their best to smear him in every way, shape, or form. And I think that was a very hard thing to do, because if you watch his earlier stuff, especially when it goes on news networks and things like that, there's actually a famous video of when he went on, I think it was NBC or something, and they were interviewing him, and he completely just broke them down for how incompetent they are. And like, he pretty much just took over the show and did it himself. Now, you can't have people like that.
Right.
You can't have people challenging the status quo.
Right. Another example that comes to mind, another comedian, Dave Chappelle. Same sort of thing where like he rose to huge heights of fame and fortune and notoriety, and because he's hilarious, and he left it all. He walked away because of the compromise, because of the corruption, right? I mean, isn't that the vibe that you got from when he walked away?
Definitely. He spoke pretty openly about the people that are around him that were trying to convince him to do certain things and perform certain ways and take certain deals. And he spoke pretty openly about it. Now, I am going to do a plug for Russell here, because he still has a YouTube channel. He focuses on that, and he talks about things that are happening now that other celebrities don't, which is surprising. And I don't agree with him on everything, but he talks about the Great Reset. He talks about all this stuff, and that is extremely dangerous for someone with his popularity, because he's still very popular. But they tried their smear games to bring him down too. An example of that was, once again, you can't go against the system. If you know who the Jonas Brothers are, famous boy band, once again, kind of celebrity idols put there to push a younger generation. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here. All of them got these rings that was supposed to be some sort of celibate ring that they wouldn't engage in any sexual activities before they got married. Now, we all know that's a crock of shit. These are a bunch of 17-year-old kids with probably like 80% of the population of women trying to go after them. And Russell Brand called them out for it, and he took the piss out of them for it. He was like, yeah, okay, that's not a show. Like, and then they can completely try to rip him for it and like tried to make him look like a bad guy that, we weren't lying and shit. Like, it's like, of course you're lying. Like, you're 17-year-old teenage boys.
What he's doing is, I think the bigger conversation in that Russell Brand may have been sparking there is the total contrast between the facade of, say, for example, Disney or Nickelodeon stars and the really seedy underbelly of Hollywood and what they do with those child actors, and how fake the facade is. And so I think that's definitely a discussion that needs to be had, and somebody from Hollywood on the inside would definitely know that. So good on him for talking about that and raising those issues, because really people need to know and be aware of how dark and disturbing the real Hollywood lifestyles are, even with and especially with these young child actors and singers. It's messed up.
It is messed up.
But yeah, Hollywood's rigged just like the rest of it, because if you are not part of the club, you don't get to be, to have the #1 hit or to be on the TV series or get that movie deal. You just don't. But I guess another main thing we need to talk about, obviously, is how the election was rigged, because that was pretty blatant in your face. I mean, the system's rigged when the guy that's the creepy hair sniffer who can't string together a coherent thought and is under criminal investigation for running an international criminal organization of spying, money laundering, compromising powerful people, bribery. That's the guy that gets
quid pro quo live on TV.
That's the guy that gets put into office. That's how you know the system's rigged. I mean, the man couldn't get 20 people to show up at his rallies, but we're gaslighted into believing that 80 million votes were cast for him. I mean, come on, man. Right?
Yeah,
it's insane. The system's rigged when we have proof. Like on the screen.
If I had $1 for every time you said rig it.
That's what the show's about.
I know.
Everything's rigged.
I'm counting here. It's hilarious. Now keep going.
Yeah, we have proof. Look here. We have 6 states. 6 states, we have proof of widespread evidence of voter fraud. Yet, not a court would allow evidence to be introduced in hearings. Not even the highest court in the land. And you had governors who have connections to either the Chinese government or have been compromised in some way, and they're certifying these election results knowing full well that there was plenty of fraud, and they certified them knowing that it was illegal to do that. And then you really know it's rigged. There you go, count again. When we had the congressmen who were willing to go as far as vote to confirm the Electoral College votes in the middle of the night, no less, knowing that they were fraudulent. And not only that, but they were targeting and still are targeting the political opponents who actually had the guts to speak out against the fraud. But here's how you really know it's rigged. Last time I'm going to say it, promise. Here's how you really know. When it takes 25,000 National Guard troops and barbed wire fences surrounding the installed president to protect him from the people, that's how you know. Go to one over there. Go to the left, yeah. That's how you know. I mean, this is Banana Republic kind of crap. You don't do this for someone who's duly elected, right?
It's what we're seeing now in the world, and it's weird. It's weird because it's so strange for the way we behave, and so strange for the way that we think. Everything is inverted. Bad is good, good is bad, truth is lies, lies is truth, up is down, left is right, right is left. It's so it's maddening. It is maddening. It is not the sign of a healthy society, and I've brought this up in the past, using Nazi Germany as an example. Now, Nazi Germany society would have been classified as a psychopathic, sociopathic society. And if you weren't like that, if you were just a normal person that wasn't born with that, defect or anything on the dark triad of personality traits, you would have been ostracized, you would have been attacked, you would probably have been thrown in jail or a camp because of wrongthink on their behalf. And it's scary seeing the similarities of what we're seeing now in the US on a scale that they're just using more of today's technology. But the premise is the same.
It is, yeah. I mean, they're weaponizing the DOJ, FBI, DHS, CIA. I mean, you name it. Every three-letter agency will be weaponized against us for quote-unquote wrongthink, to target political opponents of this, corrupt, illegitimate government. They're labeling us, the populists, we the people who are against this illegitimate government, as domestic terrorists, and going after them in the same way you were just describing. I mean, go to the tab, to the next tab over. Here's just an example of it. This summary put out, bulletin by DHS. They're on high alert for domestic terrorism. And this bulletin is clearly referencing people who are pro-Trump, who are MAGA, who are populist, and not Antifa. This isn't talking about Antifa here. This is talking about a terrorism advisory throughout the country because of people like us, political opponents to this regime, this illegitimate regime that's in power now.
Yeah, and like you said, you can see the inversion here as well. When BLM, when Antifa were burning down the Capitol, were trying to break into the White House, were attacking guards, were completely organized, completely domestic terrorists. You didn't get a bulletin like this. You didn't even get the National Guard in DC.
No. It's
but
crazy.
Now, one day after this, but like they have the system, and that's the problem. That's the problem. No one's going to challenge whatever Joe Biden does because they have the system, not the media, not anything. Like if you can look at what Trump did over his 4 years and what the Dems have done in 2 weeks, because there's been no objection to it. They've completely just let all this completely go run through. That's what happens when you control the institution. That's what happens when you control the government. And that is how you know that this is something that's been in works for a long time, not just a year or a day or a decade. They know how to control this because they do control it.
So the question is, what do we do?
That's a great question. And I think it's a very uphill battle because I think what we're seeing now is a madness, a plague, a psychopathic, sociopathic regime rising in the West. And like I said, we've seen this in the past, except this time the US aren't the good guys. And they are already pushing this doctrine on foreign nations. They're already using their Ministry of Truth to affect foreign elections. And this is a very dangerous road we're on. It's like, I can't say that I'm not surprised, to be honest with you, with the amount of things they control and how. I'm not going to say we let them get there, because there is a big difference between people that can think logically, that are more on the light side, light triad side of things. Is we believe in justice, we believe in honor, we have morality. They have no morality. They will lie, they will cheat, they will manipulate, they will indoctrinate, and they will infiltrate. That is how they fight, and that's unfortunately a very effective way to fight. So the question is, what do we do about it? It's a real tough one for me. Like, I don't want to black pill here. I know I can only do what I can do. You know, I can only use my power in whatever positive way I can to reach more people. And I mean, we do see people every now and then in certain fields that do stand up, that do speak out, that do become whistleblowers against the system. And I think we need those people now more than ever. But we need control of some of these institutions, or at least create our own away from it. Because
Bingo.
without that, I don't see a way. And if you have, especially a military arm of this government that is seeing what is happening to the nation and still doesn't do anything about it, that's going to cause fractions within the military themselves. You can guarantee that. And I think that will be a problem. Well, maybe not a problem, maybe actually helpful to our side in times to come. Depends how far this goes. And it doesn't look like it's stopping, but you will see a breakaway, because a lot of military and a lot of army do lean populist.
Yeah, do me a favor, go to your graphic that you created.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, because I was thinking about this too, and I think the only way to win is to not play their game at all, or to turn the rules of the game against them, like the people are doing against Wall Street hedge fund billionaires right now. But I think ultimately we've got to create our own game. You know, our own system of media, social media, banking, business, education, medicine. I mean, we really have to build from the ground up, living outside of their game. And it starts with each of us as individuals, just making little choices, like making the choice to turn off the news or mainstream media in general, making the choice to delete that Facebook account, or to homeschool your kids, or to build a network of doctors and nurses that promote therapeutics and not push vaccines, or to be that outsider who runs for a local office that isn't afraid to stand against the system. There's millions of us, and each of us has a role to play in it. But the thing is that this entire rigged game is built on an illusion, and they need enough of us to buy into it, to buy into the lies and the propaganda and comply. And if too many of us no longer play their game, then the entire illusion crumbles, and they're terrified of that happening.
Well, that's why you've seen an acceleration in their plan.
Right.
They're not, like I said, they don't care if the veil's pulled over now. They know there is quite definitively two sides. Their side and the people that are critical, logical thinkers and that can see through the bullshit. They know this, but they don't care anymore.
Yeah. I think that as time goes on with this trajectory, it's only going to cause more people to wake up from the illusion because the illusion's really being broken. And then they're going to be forced to finally make a decision on where they stand, because they can no longer claim ignorance, right?
And here's the thing, it comes to them too. They just don't know it yet. Even if they want to be an ally to this this new world order, this new, you can call it an evil globalistic regime, they'll come for you too, because they don't care about you. You're not one of them. They use you.
Yeah, just like George Carlin says, it's a club, and you and I, we're not in it. Yep.
Oh,
All right. Well, I think that we covered some of the big ways that the system's rigged, but you could go on for days. And I guess we'll just have to see. I think that the point isn't about stopping their plans. Sadly, this is kind of a black pill for me. It's about waking enough people up to their plans so that they have time to make a choice.
But it also comes to a point where there is only so far that you can push just people before they push back. And they have a very high tolerance for this stuff. But when that tolerance breaks, it breaks, and it breaks with the thunder. And that is generally throughout history when you see the pendulum swing backwards.
Yeah. And you're starting to see that with Wall Street, that people are realizing the power in the numbers of people standing against the rigged system. So once they realize that power, they don't ever go back. And like you said, the games are changing now rapidly, right?
Mm-hmm. So keep sticking it to them, and keep spreading your truth, and keep standing in your authenticity, because it makes a difference.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today here on Hive Mind. Please be sure to share this podcast. We have in the description a link to all of our platforms that we're on. So check that out if you're interested in finding us on alt tech platforms. We're trying to really move more in that direction, and we want to bring all of you with us. So check out those links in the description. And for all of our supporters for Patreon and PayPal, we really appreciate you guys. You can check out links for that too. So we'll see you back next time right here on Hive Mind.